Okay, so let's start from our BTP cockpit here, and from this sub-account we have created explicitly for our generative AI enablement session. So here you can see we have one AI Core instance created with the extended plan, and this means that this instance will include the new Generative AI Hub capability. We have also a subscription to SAP AI Launchpad, and as you know, this will serve as a UI for AI Core and also for the new Generative AI Hub. So let's open this AI Launchpad. What we can see is that it's empty, and in fact is not yet it was not yet connected to any AI Core instance. This is something that we can do now by simply providing the AI Core service key. Let's assume we have created one previously and saved it locally. Now we can create a connection by clicking on the add button and uploading the service key from our laptop. So we can assign a name to the connection. Let's call it, for example, AI Core Extended, and let's create it. And now we can see we have created this connection between AI Launchpad and AI Core, and this will allow us to manage AI Core from AI Launchpad. And we see also that with this operation, a default resource group was immediately created. We can select it and we can proceed and work on it. So on the left hand side of the window we see the menu, and we can recognize the usual administration and machine learning operations menus. And now we can see also the Generative AI Hub section. Before looking into the Generative AI Hub and start using it, we need to deploy in AI Core our large language models. This operation can be executed by means of the AI Core API that can be consumed from a client like Postman, or directly from AI Launchpad, as we are going to do now. So if we go into machine learning operations, and if we go under scenarios, we can notice that in our AI Core extended plan, we have already a scenario pre-configured for us by SAP. Without going into details, this is basically the way the large language models are made available to us. If we click on it, on this scenario, we can notice that we have only two executables here, though there will be more in the future. Let's remember that in AI Core, an executable basically is a collection of information needed to execute some operations, for example, like the deployment of a new model. So in this case, these executables include all the information needed to start an inference platform for our large language models. But which large language models? The names of the executables are self-explanatory. So the executable named Azure OpenAI will allow us to deploy the models coming from Azure OpenAI and the partnership with Microsoft. The other one, named AI Core Open Source, allows us to deploy open source models. In particular, we can click on the executables and we can check the supported models. For example, for the open source models, we can recognize Falcon, while if we click on the Azure OpenAI, we can see the supported models are the well-known GPT 3.5, GPT-4, and we have also the text embedding model. Now, let's see how we can deploy one of these large language models in AI Core. In order to do that, we need to create a configuration first. So we go into configurations. Here we can see there are already some configurations created previously. We can try to create another one. So let's click on the button Create. And so we need to assign a name to the configuration. For example, let's assume we would like to deploy GPT-4, and so we can assign, let's assign an appropriate name. At this point, we need to select our scenario for the foundation models, the version, and also the serving executable. Since we want to deploy GPT-4, we need to select Azure OpenAI. We click next, and in the following screen we can basically select the model. Let's select GPT-4 by providing the proper label, and then we can select the model version. Now, if we choose here latest, the version of the model will be updated every time there is a new version. So let's keep this value. We can click on next. We can review the input artifacts, but in this case we don't need to specify anything. And we can finally review the configuration, and we can create it. At this point, we can trigger the deployment of the model. With this operation, we will expose the model for consumption through an endpoint. It's enough to, let's say, click on the Create a Deployment button. We can choose at this point for how long we want our deployment to run. We can run it indefinitely, or we can specify a time frame. Let's select the unlimited duration. Let's review, and then let's create the deployment. Once we have done that, we have to wait a bit until the status of the deployment is running. And at that point, a deployment URL will be available, and this will allow us to consume the GPT-4 model from a client like Postman, for example, or from the Generative AI Hub. And this is what we are going to see in the next demo.